Hello, welcome to everybody. We start the third meeting of Chiedi Scena, ITI Meets the World, and in this case we have USA. It's a very great pleasure and great honor to have so many people from performing arts communities. We know in this moment it's very important to share together our experience in the international level. The family of International Theatre Institute is a network all over the world, and also it's very important to continue to share our experiences and how in each part of the world the community of performing arts are fronting this extraordinary situation of COVID, of the theater closed and so on. But we continue to work together because it's a right very important, not only for the performing arts community, but for all the community all over the world to continue to work in theater, in music, in all the performing arts. And also I give the floor to General Director Tobias Biancone, please.
Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Fabio and Roberto and Astragali team for making this Chiedi Scena possible. And I think it's a very good idea because even for me, I tell you, normally I travel around the world, not possible, okay. And then there is the Congress, and they're not possible to see you because I have so many emergencies and meetings and meeting with important people, so-called important people and whoever. So this is good that this series are created by the Italian Center, and it's good to see this time so many familiar and not yet familiar faces from the USA. It's really nice to see you. I welcome all of you, and I'm eager to hear what you have to tell. And one last thing, Fabio, we will put it on the website and on your website and whatever on the website of ITI so that people can watch it there as well, but afterwards here today, because at the moment it's a lot of traffic for Words Here Today, which is end of the week. Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm listening.
Okay, I give the floor to my colleague, the Vice President for Americas, Teresa Eyring, that will coordinate the meeting today. Please, Teresa.
Thank you so much, Fabio, and thank you, Tobias. It's such a joy and an honor to be here at the beginning of World Theater Day week. So we're excited to celebrate World Theater Day on March 27th, but today we have the opportunity to talk to you about some extraordinary work that's happening in theater and across performing arts disciplines here in the United States. Again, my name is Teresa Eyring. I use pronouns she, her. I am the Executive Director of Theater Communications Group, which is the national organization for theater in the US and a shared home for ITI USA. Before we really get started here, I wanted to take a moment to offer our respects to the many ancestral native lands on which we gather here in the US and honor the traditional stewards of these lands. TCG is located on the Lenape island of Mannahatta in Lenapehoking, the Lenape homeland, and we want to honor the generations of stewardship the Lenape peoples have given to the water, air, and land. As guests, we pay respect to the Lenape peoples, past, present, and future, here in their homeland and throughout the Lenape diaspora. That's a recognition that we try to make sure that we offer at TCG through our meetings, and it's become a practice throughout the theater community as well to recognize that the lands we occupy, mostly unceded Native American lands. Just brief history of ITI US, very brief, and then we're going to hear from a few of my colleagues in the ITI US Center, as well as from 3 different theater companies that actually do cross-disciplinary work. I'm very excited to hear from these artists and leaders. ITI US was founded by Rosamund Gilder, who was one of the co-founders of Worldwide ITI. She was very influential in international work in the US. She was a journalist. Martha Quanier, many of you know, came and began working at ITI US and then eventually became the executive director and was a president of ITI worldwide for many years. In the late 1990s, ITI moved into Theater Communications Group. We essentially merged with ITI US. Martha continued as the leader. Eventually, she retired, and Joan Chanick came in as the representative for ITI US. And then in 2006, Amelia Cachapero became the ITI US representative and served on the executive council of ITI. In 2016, we made the decision to try to collaborate with another entity in hosting ITI US. And we had conversations with Derek Goldman at the Laboratory for Global Performance in Politics. We thought there would be a great alignment between our two organizations. Derek, the lab is based at Georgetown University in Washington, DC. TCG, ITI US are located in New York, as mentioned earlier. So we currently collaborate to house with the Laboratory for Global Performance in Politics in a new entity that's called the Global Theater Initiative. Some of the staff members from the Global Theater Initiative are here. You're going to hear from Derek and Amelia in a minute. Also with us is Raksak Kongsang, also known as Big, as well as Julie Hendren, who is our new Dr. Carrie English Global Connectivity Manager, and she organized the program for today. So thank you, Julie. With no further ado, I'd love to pass along the mic to Derek Goldman. Give you the floor, Derek, to give some updates on some of the things happening in ITI US from your perspective.
Thanks, Teresa. It's wonderful to be here. I just want to echo the gratitude to Fabio and Roberta for the sort of inspiration to gather these conversations, and just it really feels meaningful to be among family in this Zoom space. I'll be brief because Teresa did a beautiful job of laying out some of the infrastructure. I'm Derek Goldman. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm based in Washington, D.C., land of the Piscataway. And we've had this extraordinary partnership with TCG over several years in the development of the Global Theater Initiative. But it's now at a really exciting moment as we expand and welcome new team members to that. I just wanted to kind of lift up in this space how much of our focus in recent years has been on developing the voices of emerging artists and the younger generation within ITI, and particularly the development over several years of our network for higher education and the performing arts, which has grown quickly. We inaugurated it with a festival at the last World Congress that happened in person in Segovia. We were scheduled to have a festival last summer at Piccolo Teatro in Milan, which the pandemic made not possible, but we were able to have quite a remarkable virtual festival that brought academies and universities together from around the world. And so that's been an area that's been really exciting to watch grow, and where we just see an enormous trajectory forward. The lab in Washington, D.C. and at Georgetown I feel deeply linked to everything that brings us together. It's all about relationship building. Our mission is to harness the power of performance to humanize global politics. I'll just lift up two programs that may be relevant. We have a Lab Global Fellows program that consists of emerging path-breaking artists from all over the world working at the intersection of theater and social change, social justice, and that there'll be a new cohort selected this summer. We have a second cohort now and a third cohort selected this summer. And we do a biennial global festival called Cross Currents that was postponed from spring 2021, but will be happening in spring 2022. It culminates in an event called The Gathering that many people who are part of this program were at when we inaugurated it in spring 2019. So we look forward to welcoming many of you to Washington, D.C. in spring of 2022. I'll just close by saying, echoing Fabio, I think the pandemic has, of course, been so hard in so many ways, but I think it has also exposed so much of what had been broken and challenging before in our field and in our industry, and has recentered us around the work that ITI is so great at, which is, I think, bringing people together across borders, across differences. And I think we're able to do that virtually in really meaningful ways through the pandemic. And I really am hopeful and excited about how we move into a new era as we start to gather again, but can kind of build on lessons learned during this time. So great to be here. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it to my other wonderful ITI GTI colleague, Amelia Cachapero.
Hey, thanks, Derek and Teresa, and of course to Fabio and Roberta for gathering us here. It's so great to see you. I think during this pandemic, we've learned that we can come together, feel each other's energy, and actually are having less of a carbon footprint and making our planet a little bit better without all of the traveling. So I'm Amelia Cachapero at TCG, GTI. I use she, her pronouns, and I am standing on the land of the Lenape people, also known as Manhattan. As Teresa mentioned, yes, this is World Theater Day week, and we are gearing up for that. Our practice over the last few years has been to identify a US-based artist to write an address that complements and parallels. And our author this year is Olga Garay English, who you'll see in her address, and the video we're making of her address is actually quite connected in a variety of ways to Helen Mirren, who is our worldwide address, and that was just synchronicity. The other thing actually that I wanted to mention and put on your radar is many of you know that TCG does a national conference every year. It is going to be virtual again this year, but I'd love you to put it on your calendars, May 13th and 14th, and the 20th and 21st. And also as part of our kind of regular practice is we generally have a global roundtable where we're able to bring in people primarily from the US, but colleagues from across the globe to talk, exchange, learn from each other, make connections. And again, that is one thing that's been a plus during this pandemic and Zoom life, is that we've been able to bring together and include folks that may not have been able to fly to the US. So with that, I wanted to introduce Daniel Banks and Adam McKinney, who are the co-leaders of DNA Works. They're waving there in their Zoom box. DNA Works, if you're not aware of them, is an arts and service organization dedicated to dialogue and healing through the arts and engaging topics of representation, identity, and heritage, all the things that are so very important in this world that we're living in. I actually wanted to mention that Daniel has a very long relationship with TCG and with our programs, and he was the 2020 Alan Schneider Director Award recipient. So wanted to just give that a plug here in this moment. So I want to pass the mic over to Daniel and Adam. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Amelia. My name is Daniel Banks. I'm co-director of DNA Works, as Amelia said. My pronouns are he, him, his. We are here in Fort Worth, Texas, on the unceded lands of multiple Native American nations, including Cherokee, Muskogee, Creek, Seminole, Kickapoo, Shawnee, Caddo, and Wichita, who were forcibly removed from their homes by settler colonialism and from which non-Native people now benefit. And this is part of our understanding of our work here. I also want to thank the ITI Italy and US ITI for the invitation to be here today. TCG has been a home for us for many years, for me in particular, and also to Julie for organizing so diligently today's gathering. And I really want to say what an honor it is to be here with all these dear colleagues who are my family. And it's so good to be sharing this space with you all. So just really love and embrace you. As Amelia mentioned, we were founded to catalyze dialogue and healing through the arts. We came together in 2006 because we sought more and better representations of mixed and multiple heritage identities. We center BIPOC and LGBTQT2SPIAA+ voices to create more complex representations of identity, culture, class, and heritage in dance, theater, film, and writing. And we have led programming and performances in 37 states and 17 countries. All our projects include community story circles to balance the artist and community voices. Today you'll get a brief taste of two of our current works. And with that, I would like to pass the mic to Adam.
Thank you, everyone. Ciao a tutti, grazie for having us. My name is Adam McKinney. My pronouns most often are he, him, his, and in some queer communities of color, she, her, hers. Our goal is to create art to create the world we want. I'd like to share with you a bit about one piece in particular that's called Hamapada Map that we created in 2010. And it is a response to all the ways that my Blackness, my nativeness, and my Jewishness have all been in question. As Daniel mentioned, we create work to create opportunities of representing on stage and in the world our mixed and multiple identities and heritages. Likewise, our work engages communities to be in conversation with each other about the vestiges and the impact of colonialism and racism, and all the ways in which we are left alone to deal with those effects. And so in 2010, we created Hamapada Map to represent my body and my dancing body in particular as a map of memory, and to create opportunities to heal ancestral memory. And in 2017, we began the process of transposing this dance theater work into a dance on film, whereby we returned to the sites of my ancestors, West Africa, Eastern Europe, and around the United States, to film myself dancing in those locations as a way to heal trauma in my family and trauma in our communities and trauma in my body. So what you'll see now is an excerpt from Hamapada Map Dance on Film called Box. I was given my name, first man of day and molded into the spirit of two, of both man and woman.
I am Eagle Dancer, screeching from the sky, whole and full and all and not half anything, but two, spirit. I am medicine person, orator, and keeper of sacred songs, historian, storyteller, leader, and peacekeeper. I name myself now in this place, Red Earth. And we are of the same blood, our chromosomes commingling, spiraling, moving, spinning.
So as Adam mentioned, we just released that film this past January, and we're currently screening it remotely for lots of different audiences. The next piece we'll talk about briefly, we premiered in December and we're bringing it back in this coming weekend. It's called Fort Worth Lynching Tour, honoring the memory of Mr. Fred Rouse. And Adam will give you a little bit about that history, but to give you some context, and Julie, if you want to begin that video now, that would be great. This is a socially distant, multi-site specific work, which is both a car or a bike tour, depending on what the participant chooses. It comes with this app that you're seeing photos of right now that uses augmented reality in order to engage people at each of these sites that are connected to the 1921 lynching of a man named Mr. Fred Rouse. And Adam will give you a little bit more information now about Mr. Rouse and the history of the Ku Klux Klan here in Fort Worth and why we created this tour.
Thank you, Daniel. In the 1920s, Fort Worth, Texas had one of the largest Ku Klux Klan memberships in the 1920s, as I mentioned, in the United States. Mr. Fred Rouse was a non-union butcher in Fort Worth, Texas, and he was kidnapped and then hanged from a tree, a hackberry tree in Fort Worth, Texas. In Fort Worth Lynching Tour, honoring the memory of Mr. Fred Rouse, we move audiences around our city to the sites associated with the murder of Mr. Rouse as a way to look back to history to remember. It is a form of memorial activism. Trauma theorists believe that in order to heal trauma, we must return to the sites of memory and replace our traumatic memories with new ones. And so this is what we are doing through community activism and community performance to move in the direction of one another, to heal those vestiges of colonialism and racism, and do it together as a community.
And just a couple details about the piece to wrap up. This was discussed and designed with residents from many groups here in Fort Worth. We actually invited local and national artists to contribute their work to the app. So you see performances in the work, including poetry, dance, visual arts. We even asked a local pastor to give a eulogy for Mr. Rouse because, to the best of our knowledge, he didn't have a funeral. So when you're at the site of the cemetery where he's buried, you hear this eulogy by local pastor Tatum. And we actually reverse the order. So we don't go in chronological order of these sites. We unravel history and go backwards so as not to re-traumatize or repeat or re-experience the order of the murder of the lynching. And finally, we have mental health professionals who are accompanying us on the tour. And at every step of the way, there are Black mental health professionals to support, and we share resources with the audience, how they can best take care of themselves during the tour.
Thank you. Thank you again for having us. And feel free to check out our website, which is dnaworks.org. Grazie.
Thank you, everybody.
Julie, you could go
Thank
ahead.
you so much. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Daniel and Adam, for your work. We're just full of gratitude for you being here and also sharing that with us. Thank you so much. So next up, I would like to introduce Two Worlds. Two Worlds strives to empower Native communities through theater that is of, by, and for Native Americans. Two Worlds was founded in 2006 and is based in Albuquerque, home of the Tiwa people. And Two Worlds works all across New Mexico, the traditional homeland of 23 tribal communities consisting of 19 pueblos, as well as the Dene and Apache peoples. Two Worlds is dedicated to the craft of performing arts, expressing the duality of the contemporary American Indian through the performing arts. And guided by shared Native experiences, Two Worlds also works to connect with the global community. And some examples of that is, for instance, Two Worlds Executive Director Kim Gleason, who's a fantastic performer, was recently the lead actor in Kiara Guidi's The Land of the Earthworms. Kiara came out here and worked with our community, transforming her piece to work with local issues around immigration and identity that were happening here in New Mexico. And Kim collaborated with Kiara, which was very exciting. Also, Lee and Reed, who are going to also speak to you in a moment, as theater educators and writers, playwrights, and directors, also do a fair amount of exchange with their students and artists here, Indigenous students and artists in New Mexico, and also Indigenous artists and students in Africa, in Australia, and New Zealand. So collaborating with different Native voices and artists and performers is what Two Worlds is all about. So please welcome Lee, Reed, and Kim from Two Worlds in New Mexico.
Goatsi haupa, Tawater Drash, Wahinome Lee Francis, Washesh Kawekame, Eve Americaname. Good morning to all of you. My name is Dr. Lee Francis. My family on my dad's side is from the Pueblo of Laguna, what we call Kawek in our language, which is Karis. My mom is Anglo from the great state of Missouri, here dead center in the United States. So coming from a mixed heritage and background, I have had a long, deep relationship in theater and have studied Native and Indigenous theater for many years. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about that, but I want to make sure that I have a moment to introduce or have my colleagues introduce themselves. So Reed, if you would like to introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Yat Turich in Nishle, Bilagana Bashichin, Bilagana Dasha Che, Bilagana Dashanale Totinishete Nasha, Dobe Didlas and Nilted Nasha. Agegos Kenishle, Native American Community Academy, Bealta. Good morning, everyone. My name is Reed Bobroff. I am a playwright, a performer, a poet, and I'm also the drama teacher and the arts integration coordinator at the Native American Community Academy, where I graduated from high school. Before I was in the first graduating class of NACA, I attended Yale University, where I studied theater. And then after doing some work with the Yale Child Study Center around healing and the role of the creative arts, specifically performance and creative writing, how that can help our communities, our Native communities and Indigenous youth heal from historical and personal trauma, I took that work back to NACA to build our drama program.
Thank you, Reed. Kim, if you would also like to take a moment to introduce yourself.
and it's possible, Kim, in just to
Yes.
just to acknowledge, you know, a life of the New Mexico artist and the US artist is often we have multiple jobs, and Kim is also trying to balance another job. So as she says, give me 2 minutes.
2 minutes and we will circle back around. So that's good. I'll take 2 minutes to kind of discuss Two Worlds. I have the good fortune to serve at the pleasure on the board for Two Worlds Theater and Film here in Albuquerque. It has a long and deep history, but I am forever indebted to the work that Kim Gleason has done to bring together as the one that's renovated and revitalized and reinvigorated the organization and has really moved it into a space to create some incredible and profound work over the last 3 years. And I have been entirely indebted to her vision and to her direction for the organization. Native folks and indigenous peoples have a long and storied history in world and global theater, starting back in the mid-1600s. The first mention of Native people and the codification of the concept of the noble savage came from John Dryden's The Conquest of Granada. As Native people were not in a position at the time to control the media, the representations of Native and Indigenous people through American theater and British theater and global theater was often predicated upon inaccuracies, stereotypes, and later what became propaganda to justify the removal and genocidal and ethnocidal practices towards Native people from coast to coast in the United States and abroad. As Native people began to control their own media in the 20th century, the 1900s, a new theater forms emerged. And out of that came numerous companies, including Two Worlds, to be able to not only push back against these misrepresentations, stereotypical representations, but also to create new art forms based on traditional storytelling, based on contemporary storytelling, based on issues around identity, based on a global identity, based on a mixed identity that involved not only the traditional homelands, but the urban centers in which we all existed. And one of the main components of that is how we were also, or how much of this theater has evolved to become space place oriented, and how we address and create collaborative and cooperative theater pieces with multiple entities to not only the misrepresentation, but also the erasure of Native identity in multiple locations. So we'll talk a little bit about one of the works, but now that Kim is back, I'm going to let her have a chance to introduce herself as well as the proper introduction for Two Worlds. So Kim, you take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry. It's been a busy morning. I'm Kim Gleason. I'm Navajo and come from, respectively, from the communities of Window Rock, Arizona, as well as Crown Point and through New Mexico. I'm very honored to be here today, and along with all the other great groups and colleagues of ours. I just want to let you all know that you are on tribal land wherever you are, but specifically you're on Navajo and the 19 pueblos that are here in, as well as Apache lands here in New Mexico. So yes, thank you, Reed and Lee, for being here, who are also board members for Two Worlds. And it's been an incredible movement we've been working toward for a very long time. We've actually started for about 2006, and we barely became a 501c in 2018. And since then, we've been sort of moving forward faster than I can keep up. So basically, originally Two Worlds was founded by James Lujan from Taos Pueblo, and it's been a journey, absolute journey, taking over what his actual concept was to better educate natives and non-natives about Native American theater and performing arts, especially with the film moving in early in the earlier in the 2000s that he wanted to make sure that we had a place already integrated into being here. So basically, Lee has already kind of introduced a lot about Two Worlds. Our mission is basically trying to find our identity through, obviously through certain levels like the legal and social aspect of the world, but also just making sure that we reclaim our voice and impact our future as younger generations continue to go into theater and performing arts. I graduated from the University of New Mexico in 2005 with a theater degree. I was basically one of the only natives in the program at the time, but it was an honor because that introduced me to the playwrights that are here locally right now. Some of them that I really still look up to is Terry Gomez, who is a wonderful playwright here in town. Lee and Reed are both playwrights as well, and I tend to work with some of the local playwrights, which includes Jay Musket and Zia Skeets, who are pretty well known here in Albuquerque as well. So we've just been sort of, I think since the beginning, we've just realized that we wanted to put our name out there, getting rid of the stereotypes of what we are told to be playing, and then create our own work, specifically original work. So we're very excited about this coming year. And our core values is basically just trying to continue to advocate for positive change, thought-provoking, innovative works of performance art, and putting ourselves on a professional level here in New Mexico. So thank you for letting us speak today.
Thanks, Kim. So the work that we have done, Julie, you can throw this up, and then I'll also throw up to Reed as well to kind of close this out. But the work that Two Worlds has done, one of the major pieces that we did prior to the pandemic that came a previous summer was it was a way to connect us back. It was called a Living Archive of Urban Indians, and we had an outdoor show. I was able to script it. We had numerous performers. And one of the connection pieces that we brought in with Reed was also not only to connect this current generation, but our future generations as well. And Reed has been instrumental in running his particular program. And so we have been connecting not only our land, but our seventh generation. And I'll let Reed kind of close out with, I think, about another 30 seconds to 45 seconds about some of the work that he's been doing with NACA as the pictures slide out.
Yeah, so specifically in this show, NACA was brought in. We had some Native students who were crew members to help support the production since it was the summer and we weren't in school. But the play centered around the Albuquerque Indian School, which is actually NACA sits in the last standing building of the Albuquerque Indian School, which was the place that our city was built around. And so it's really important as Native students that we're considering this history, that our city is considering this history, and that we are taking ownership of it and really being the tellers of that story of the Native people and historians of this city and the way that our history moves about us fluidly. And I was very grateful to direct this production and be a part of this show so that we could showcase that history and that we could continue to support our city and Native students as we continue to build our ideas about what it means to be from Albuquerque, to live in the city, and what that means for Native people.
So everybody, thank you so much for allowing us to be here. To all of you, I hope you are all staying well and wonderful. We send our blessings to you here from Albuquerque. And thanks for the time to be able to talk about some of this great work.
Thank you so much, Two Worlds. We really appreciate it. And you can also visit them at twoworldsnm.org. So we encourage you to do that as well.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Two Worlds. Thank you, DNA Works. This is really just so inspiring and heartening to hear about the work that you all are doing and how you're thinking about the role of performance, the role of theater in our lives, in our society, on our lands. So thank you for that. Next up, we have La Mama and Mia Yu. Mia, we're so excited that you could be here with us today, also because La Mama has such a close connection both to the Italian Center of ITI as well as to ITI itself worldwide. And I'm just going to say that La Mama was founded in the same year as Theater Communications Group, 1961. So we kind of grew up together as organizations. And Ellen Stewart, the founder of La Mama, was very involved in ITI. She was one of the founders of the Network for Heritage, Indigenous Cultures and Migration. And I remember, Mia, I think you and I met for the first time when you were at a World Congress, correct? In Madrid? No, not in Madrid, but I think you've been to a World Congress, maybe not, but I remember that was the last Congress that Ellen attended, and it was really such a beautiful thing to see her there and to realize just what a force she was on the global stage and how important it was to her. But we're also so excited about your leadership at La Mama as Ellen's successor and all the things that you've been doing there. So we'd love to hear what's up.
Thank you, everybody. So honored to be here with all of you. And thank you to all that made this gathering possible. La Mama is on Manhattan, and Manhattan has always been a gathering and trading place for many indigenous peoples, where nations intersected from all four directions since time immemorial. It was a place to gather and sometimes a place to seek refuge during times of conflict and struggle. La Mama acknowledges that we are situated on the island of Manhattan, traditional lands of the Munsee Lenape, the Canarsie, Unkachunk, Matinacok, Shinnecock, Recongwalk, and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We respect that many indigenous people continue to live and work on this island and acknowledge their ongoing contributions to the area. And we thank Safe Harbors Indigenous Collective for crafting this statement. So La Mama began from a need within a community. And our founder, Ellen Stewart, and visionary Ellen Stewart, responded to that need by creating a home for marginalized, underrepresented artists who could explore and experiment, pushing their own boundaries of what was possible. I like to use the metaphor of jumping off the cliff with the artists. Most of the art that is presented, we don't know what we will see until opening night. For the earliest shows at La Mama, it was impossible to get theater critics to come and see the non-traditional work performed in unconventional spaces, spaces that were not meant to be theaters. Ellen thought, maybe if I take this work abroad, we could get noticed as a young US company and critics might come to see the work. So she bought one-way tickets to Europe, trusting that they would find the resources to come back home. The companies were reviewed and they were able to bring home this validation. People began to take notice of this work here in New York and beyond. With this tour and the subsequent tours and international collaborations and partnerships, Ellen saw the power of this exchange or collision of cultures. She saw how it informed the artists and their process as they continued making new work. Not only did it expand an artist's perspective, but in my own case, I see it as also strengthening one's own understanding of oneself by seeing and confronting the differences in others. She soon recognized the interconnectivity and interdependence of all these communities and places with which she came into contact. She called La Mama Theater of the World, where we as a global community shared the responsibility of being aware of what was happening outside of our own micro communities. By building this platform for a multiplicity of perspectives and aesthetics, soon the American theater was able to witness voices who were different from the mainstream. People's perceptions of theater shifted and a counter-cultural movement began. I truly believe we must look at this model shaped by Ellen Stewart. In this moment, there is the need to present new structures of cultural connectivity and to establish a grassroots movement of local communities across the world, sharing their perspectives, practices, stories, and rituals, and rethinking the systems that we have in place. For more than a decade, La Mama has been exploring how digital tools can be used to empower emerging creators and make theater making more accessible. With the Seoul Institute of the Arts, we founded our art and technology partner, Culture Hub, and have been testing the possibilities of live streaming, digital animation, projection mapping, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, 360 cameras, and other novel technologies to transform our cultural landscape. We believe that artists should be agents of technological innovation. Tech companies cannot be the sole designers of our mediated futures. La Mama's initiatives encourage artists and audiences alike to be producers of our own culture and not just consumers of it. So when the pandemic hit, the future that we were planning and imagining was now. We were given the opportunity to focus fully on our digital programming, building off of the explorations of the past years, experimenting with this new online mediated performance space. We were seeing a nascent form of something that felt immediate and yet performative. We were able to connect with people and places that we could not before, seeing in the chat a viewer from somewhere in the world who commented that they always wanted to see a La Mama show, and now they could. We were able to bring our community discussions, workshops, and forums online, deepening our engagement with audiences, allowing for multiple entry points to our artistic content. Here is a video showing some of the online happenings that we have had since March.
The adventure here, not outside.
Shall I tell you my name? Shall I speak about the city? Shall I sing a song?
Activism just means me using my voice for the voiceless. It means campaigning. It means gathering my peers.
At the beginning of the malady, certain fevers showed themselves first on the brow and then in the breath and then spread to every other part of the person.
We don't have any reason to have some, but let's have faith. Faith in our senses and our abilities. Faith in the links that connect one to another. Faith, just for the sake of it.
I'm gonna say a peach.
Okay, take off your blindfolds. Are you ready to see your fruit?
Yes.
Each means sun.
Mechanisms to do it. And so, at the Center for Constitutional Rights, we really firmly believe that if you have a storyteller and an activist and a lawyer, you can change the world. And we have, this wonderful, wonderful.
I don't think you would be here right now. Moving ever and ever closer. Leave Be gone! I have nothing you want. You have nothing I need. Just go.
In the past few months, we have continued our international work during a time when travel was not possible by passing the mic and curation over to an arts community or collective in another part of the world. At the beginning of the lockdown, we created an online variety show called Downtown Variety that uses a new open source software developed by Culture Hub that allows us to have multi-location live streams and integrate them with artfully produced mediated experiences. We have been able to include many international artists through this program, but starting in January, we had a Downtown Variety show devoted to presenting the work of interdisciplinary artists and makers in Brazil, then went on to Serbia, and this week on Friday, we will focus on the work coming out of the Seoul Institute of the Arts in Korea. We have connected with so many new artists through this format, and many of them have had their US debut on this virtual La Mama stage. So now I would like to show a short montage of some of this work of our international editions of Downtown Variety.
Ainda não é a revolução.
Also in January, with our partners, the Seoul Institute of the Arts in Korea and our colleagues in Italy, including La Mama Umbria, I.T.I Italy, the City of Spoleto, and the Bisei Choir, we began to work on a new digital multimedia experience of an opera created by Liz Suedos. The project was called Weather, and it was one of the last works of Liz before she passed away in 2016. The goal, as Liz defined it, was to use music and theater as tools to raise public awareness around climate change. This collaboration went wider with artists and technologists in France, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Mexico, exploring the ways we can utilize VR and 360-degree spaces to bring global audiences together around urgent issues. Over 6 decades, La Mama has been emergent. We are ever-changing and evolving. More than a theater company, La Mama is a global network and support system for artists who take risks and dare to reimagine better futures. By leveraging technology, we are weaving a creative mesh across the country and beyond that works collectively to bring marginalized artists to the forefront of our culture. These artists will change how we think about and experience art and ultimately transform our cultural narrative. This dream we are now calling the Radical Access Plan. Thank you so much for your time.
Yay, that was also so beautiful to see those videos. Thank you for sharing them. Emergent, ever-changing, changing society, changing the world, a sense of network, a sense of activism. Hearing these presentations makes me realize once again why I do the work that I do and how much power and importance. Our culture makers, our theater makers, again, not just theater, but theater, dance, cross-disciplinary arts makers have. And also here we are in this pandemic, we're a year in. It didn't take long for artists to figure out how to keep doing the work, whether it was outside, whether it was using Zoom, whether it was finding new ways of using online platforms as site-specific locations for the work. So thank you all for sharing. And I think we have just a few minutes left to take some questions, either if there are questions out in the world on YouTube, or if you all have questions for each other.
Yes, I have a question. Thank you very much. It was really amazing and inspiring to see all your challenging artistic work and with the communities and in relation also to such multicultural backgrounds. It's really something so important for us, and I think for many theater makers that are watching this meeting. My question is, which is the response of your community or communities to the work that you do? And how do you work also in relation about your memory, about the cultural heritage, which is connected to the memory of people who have such complex and intertwined cultural life and backgrounds? It's for all of you, or for those who wants to answer. Thank you.
Who wants to answer? How are your communities responding to the work? How do you manage such diverse cultural heritages in your work?
I can go ahead and answer some of that. This past year, we've been doing a lot of work with other Native organizations that need to address social issues. Some of them that we've been very hopeful to get out there in the world is speaking more about issues that are really important to our community, which is one of them would be the MMIW movement, which is the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. That's been a big, huge movement in terms of like trying to identify and speak more about where the Native Indigenous women are going and how we can, respectively put that on stage. So it's a great responsibility because a lot of women do tend to react to those traumas and historical traumas. So we always try to make sure that when we're integrating these kind of deep, thought-provoking performances, that we work with the right people to find a way to heal after the performance, because there's been moments where the actors come off the stage and they just start bawling. It's just like a trauma that they're taking inside themselves and expressing it out on stage. So just being very responsible and working with other communities that have also the same message that we're trying to portray, as well as working with more theater of color since the movement, Me Too movement has happened, as well as the rising up of the Black and Chicano communities. We wanted to make sure that we integrate our work along with theirs and continue the dialogue of what we can do to push against the inequality in the world right now, especially in the United States.
Thanks, Kim. Looks like me.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of go off of some of the stuff that I talked about, I mean, in terms of our online viewership, we had 20,000 a month, or unique views a month. And through this time, we've increased that to 12,000. And we've been able to connect to as many people, I'm sure, all over to places and people that we haven't been able to before. So it's kind of broken open the walls of our theaters in a way that we were imagining the potential, and now we're seeing it like right before our eyes. And in terms of in response to the second part of that question, I mean, I think I said it in my talk, but I mean, it's this rigor and about making sure that there are as many voices at the table as possible. You know, we try to have a really expansive vision of curation with guest curators, program curators. It's not just coming from one specific sort of aesthetic vision of what is art to that one person, but bringing in as many voices in that part of the infrastructure of La Mama as possible, so that you're bringing in new artists, new audiences, and really opening up the possibilities of what we can see on our stages.
For us, we first of all have thus far in Texas, all of our performances have been free. We've specifically sought funding so that there would be no barrier to access. With our current second run of Fort Worth lynching tour honoring the memory of Mr. Fred Rouse, we are doing a pay what you can just to be able to secure reservations, because there's a limited number of spots on the tour, but literally anything from $1 up. And we also include an email link that if people would like a complimentary ticket, we'll provide that. I think we've also, from our time in New Mexico to our time in Texas, we've been exploring this community partnership model, which started as inviting community leaders to be community producers on our work, where we do not ask for money. We just want to discuss the project with them and invite them to bring their constituencies to our work. And we've expanded that now to, with Fort Worth Lynching Tour, honoring the memory of Mr. Fred Rouse, we expanded that to a community circle model, where because there were questions about the work, there were questions about the title, we brought in 25 community leaders to really co-sign on the piece and add their names to it, saying that both the piece itself and the use of the word lynching was necessary here and important. So that's one of the way. And then of course, as I said, when we were showing the excerpts from the app, we felt it was important to not just have our voices be telling the story, but to have a broad range of people telling the story. So that's like what Mia was talking about, many artists at the table, many perspectives, many points of view. Part of this is really our move from experimenting with what it means to go from a sales model to a service model. If we are able to support our work in a way that doesn't depend on ticket sales, and if we're actually able to co-create it with our local community, how does that change the structure of the organization? How does that change the structure of the making and selling of art? You know, we're in the business of catalyzing dialogue, not selling art. So that's just our priority and our value and ethic. And we start with our communities. Between the two of us, we represent many different constituencies and communities, and we start there. We start with, we call it the intersecting communities in which we work and live, and that we represent. So we're also not going into other communities saying, hey, come to us. We're actually speaking to communities that we belong to. So that I hope that addresses your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Oh, I was just going, yeah, I just wanted to thank you. And I see that there are other questions coming, but we are sort of at the end of our session. And so what I'd like to encourage everyone to do is, if you are on social media, if you would follow the GTI Facebook page, I'll be posting both information about these 3 different organizations. I'll make sure to link to the YouTube for any of you who came in late, or if you want to share it around. But please follow us. There'll be a lot of information there, and information about other platforms and other ways of finding out information about GTI, ITI, TCG, and all of the great work that's happening with theater artists around the globe. And with that, I'll make sure that you can find out more about these organizations and perhaps even be able to message them with some questions questions you might have, or, it's all about connections, so we can all connect. Thank you so very much to all of the artists, to all of the guests. Thank you to Fabio and Roberta, Tobias, everyone. We're deeply appreciative and so happy we get to connect. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much to you. Just some final,
Yes.
please, Fabio.
Also, I think that then I give the floor to Tobias for the final greetings, but also there are a lot of questions, of course. It's very important to share our experiences. And also, I think that Chi è di Scena ITI Meets the World is also an opportunity for all the centers to increase and share programs and projects, a common project. It's very important to do this. It's the strength of ITI communities also is to continue to implement the common activities. For example, from Italy, we are a country of migrants, and now in the last 30 years, we are living a new dimension of relationship with migrants. And also it's a dynamic, very important, and also all the experiences that we have heard today, it's very important for us, very inspiring. And also it's an opportunity very important for us. And thank you very much to everybody. Then I give the floor to Tobias for the final greetings.
The mic, open the mic, okay. Thanks to everybody. Like, it was really interesting to hear about indigenous, the Americans, like the real Americans work that you are presenting. This was quite amazing for me to hear that. But thank you very much for conveying that to me. It gives me a new idea of what's happening in the United States. And also thank to Mia, you, because La Mama is always on everywhere. You see Ellen Stewart or La Mama, and you have to know that Ellen Stewart was very strong in opening centers in countries where the conservative ITI members at that time said, oh, you are not doing theater. So the Philippines, Sudan, and Bangladesh are in ITI and have developed very well in theater thanks to Ellen Stewart. And it was a big honor and pleasure to meet her in Madrid when she became one of the world theater ambassadors, the first theater ambassador. And it was really amazing lady. And La Mama, I'm not sure about that, but I think Helen Mirren was one on stage in La Mama with Robert Wilson. I think so. I'm not sure about that, but I guess she was, because she also was going to Africa with Peter Brook. And Peter Brook is a friend of La Mama for sure. So it might be that she was there, but I would have to do some more internet research that she was there. So it's great to hear about La Mama. And the next time I will be able to travel to New York, I for sure will visit your place and see what I heard all the time. Oh, this is good, and this person. And I meet so many persons, even a person from Hong Kong, Frederick Mao. He was part of La Mama, and he thinks about, he speaks about, oh, wow, this was a good time in my life. And that's why I know ITI. So you are doing a good job. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for TCG for doing all this gathering, Julie, Teresa, Emilia, and also thanks to Adriano, who is keeping La Mama in Umbria, in a beautiful place where we visited some more years ago. And finally, thanks also to Fabio and Roberta for organizing all this. It's a pleasure to have met you. I was very happy to listen to your voices, and I look forward to see you in real in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was great. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.